"Sir, step away from the boat." The tour guide's voice cut through the slap of water against aluminum as I stood on my own shoreline, watching 20 strangers climb onto a pontoon painted with the words Briar Glen Heritage Lake Experience. Diesel fumes drifted from a charter bus parked beside my maintenance road. Country music rattled from a portable speaker. A woman in a sun visor handed out blue wristbands beneath a wooden sign that hadn't been there 2 days earlier. Adult tour, $49. Sunset cruise, $75. Private fishing package, $129. Behind the booth, someone had bolted a lock onto my equipment shed. I stared at it until the metal taste in my mouth sharpened. "That shed belongs to me," I said. The guide glanced at my work boots, then at the faded pickup behind me. His smile stayed professional, but his shoulders squared. "Everything past the gate is controlled by Briar Glen now." A child ran by carrying a plastic fishing pole. His father lifted a phone toward the lake, filming the tree line my grandfather had protected for 40 years. The pontoon engine coughed alive. I could have stepped in front of it. I could have cut the fuel line, blocked the access road, or called the sheriff and turned the morning into a shouting match. Instead, I pulled out my phone. I photographed the boat registration, the wristbands, the temporary dock plates pressed into the mud, the 2 portable toilets sitting 10 feet from the cattails. Then I walked toward the booth. The woman selling tickets looked up from a tablet. "Reservation? Not yet. You're lucky. We had a cancellation." She rotated the screen toward me. At the top was the Briar Glen logo. Under it, in bold letters, the page promised exclusive access to a privately maintained community lake. Privately maintained. I looked past her at the water. Morning light flashed across the surface where my father had taught Rachel and me to cast without tangling our lines. Near the reeds, a tour boat wake struck the bank and tore loose a strip of wet soil. "Who authorized this?" I asked. Her expression tightened. HOA President Valerie Whitmore. She reached beneath the counter and produced a laminated sheet. Valerie's signature curled across the bottom in thick blue ink. The document claimed Briar Glen held a permanent recreational easement over the lake, shoreline, and access lane. It warned that interference with authorized activities could result in removal, civil action, and recovery of lost revenue. Valerie hadn't just walked onto my land. She had printed consequences for anyone who objected. "Problem?" the guide called from the dock. I folded my arms before my hands could give away what I was thinking. "No problem." The woman smiled again. "1 adult ticket?" "Yeah." "Name?" "E. Caldwell." She never looked up. The receipt arrived on my phone with waiver number 00418. The charge included a $12 lake restoration fee. Beneath the total, the waiver stated that Briar Glen owned, operated, and fully insured the attraction. I saved the receipt, took screenshots, and slipped the blue wristband into my pocket. When I stepped away, the heel of my boot struck something beneath the booth platform. A dull metallic click. I crouched as if tying my lace. Half buried in the dirt was an old brass survey marker, its face scratched but readable. T. Alvarez. One of the booth supports had been positioned directly over it. The guide blew a whistle. The pontoon pulled away, carrying laughing tourists toward the center of my lake. I walked back to my truck without stopping them. Inside the cab, I opened the reservation site and scrolled past sunset cruises, fishing packages, corporate outings, and private events. Every Saturday for the next 6 weeks was marked nearly sold out. Then I saw the wedding packages. Deposits accepted. Non-refundable. This wasn't a tour that had wandered onto my property. It was a business built on it. I kept scrolling until the lake disappeared behind a wall of reservation dates. Corporate retreats. Anniversary dinners. Youth fishing clinics. A founder's weekend package with catered tents and live music. My phone warmed in my hand while another charter bus groaned through the gate. I called Rachel from the truck. "Tell me Dad never signed anything giving Briar Glen access." Silence. Then the scrape of a chair across her kitchen floor. "He let them fish there once," she said. "That charity day? After the Miller House fire. One day. That's what I remember. Find everything." I drove straight to the farmhouse office, where the air smelled like dust, cedar, and the machine oil Dad used on every hinge whether it needed it or not. Rachel arrived 20 minutes later with her hair tied back and a cardboard banker's box under one arm. We spread the trust records across his old work table. The deed was where it had always been. Caldwell Lake. the lakebed, the dam, the shoreline, the gravel maintenance road, all inside the family trust. A narrow strip crossed the southeastern corner in faded blue ink. Drainage easement, Rachel read. Not a boat ramp. Not a wedding venue. Outside, tires crackled over gravel. A white SUV stopped beyond the office window, and a man in a Briar Glen security shirt stepped out with a clipboard. He taped an orange notice to our gate. Authorized community access. Do not obstruct. Violations may result in legal action. Rachel stared at it through the glass. They're posting rules on our fence now. I photographed the notice before removing it. The adhesive left a bright smear across the weathered wood. Back inside, Rachel opened the banker's box. Old fishing permits, tax receipts, dam inspection notes. Dad's handwriting ran through everything in tight block letters. Then she found a carbon copy on thin yellow paper. The top line read, BRLAR Glen Charity Fishing Day. Dad had granted access for one Saturday. No charge. No commercial use. Permission revocable at any time. The signature page was missing. Rachel rubbed her thumb over the staple holes. He kept originals somewhere else. Where? She looked toward the mudroom, where his battered green tackle cabinet still stood beneath a row of rain jackets. He logged every fish caught that day, said the kids exaggerated. We opened the cabinet, but the drawers held only lures, line, hooks, and 3 swollen notebooks that smelled like lake water. No letter. I photographed the carbon copy anyway. Then I opened Dad's maintenance ledger. For 31 years, he had recorded every tax payment, spillway inspection, shoreline repair, and culvert cleaning. Dates, receipts, weather conditions, names of contractors, not abandonment, control. My phone buzzed. A certified email from Valerie Whitmore informed me that interference with scheduled lake operations would expose the Caldwell Trust to cancellation fees, lost ticket revenue, and contractor damages. She copied Briar Glen's attorney, security company, marina operator, and property management firm. Rachel leaned over my shoulder. She had that ready fast. I opened the attachments. There were site maps, vendor schedules, parking diagrams, and a glossy sales brochure showing smiling families beside our lake. At the bottom, in small print, Valerie's real estate company was listed as the exclusive booking agent. I searched the company name. 11 recent Briar Glen home listings appeared. Each advertised permanent private access to Caldwell Lake. Some had already sold. The tours weren't the beginning. Valerie had been selling my lake for months. I printed all 11 listings before sunrise. By 7, the farmhouse printer had coughed out 43 pages of glossy promises. Lake access, private shoreline privileges, resident boating, exclusive event rights. I laid them across Dad's work table beside the deed, the drainage easement, and the orange notice Valerie's security guard had taped to our gate. The dates told me where to start. The oldest listing had gone live 14 months earlier. That afternoon, I drove into Briar Glen for the monthly board meeting. The clubhouse smelled like lemon cleaner and burnt coffee. Folding chairs faced a polished table where Valerie Whitmore sat beneath a framed photograph of Caldwell Lake. She wore a cream blazer and the kind of smile people use when they expect applause before they speak. I took a seat in the back. Valerie tapped her microphone. Our lake initiative has become the most successful community project in Briar Glen history. A slide appeared behind her. The same pontoon boat. The same ticket booth. My shoreline glowing under sunset filters. She called it a rescued community asset. She said the HOA had restored an abandoned lake, secured its historic access rights, and created a revenue stream that would protect homeowners from a dues increase. People clapped. I watched Valerie accept it like interest owed. Then she announced the next phase. Expanded parking, a floating event dock, corporate retreats, and wedding packages beginning in the fall. My jaw tightened when a projected revenue figure appeared on the screen. $286,000 a year. I raised my hand. Valerie's eyes found me, paused, then moved on. I kept it raised. Finally, she sighed. Yes, sir. Where is the recreational easement recorded? The room shifted. Chairs creaked. Someone stopped stirring coffee. Valerie tilted her head. And you are? Ethan Caldwell. The smile stayed on her face, but one hand closed around the microphone. Our council has reviewed the historical grant. That wasn't my question. A man beside her leaned toward his binder. Valerie spoke over him. Property documents involving ongoing litigation are confidential. There isn't ongoing litigation. There will be if interference continues. A few heads turned toward me now. I stood. So you're selling access, taking deposits, and signing vendor contracts. But homeowners aren't allowed to see the document proving the HOA has that right. Her voice cooled. This meeting is not a courtroom. No, courtrooms require evidence. The microphone clicked off. A woman near the aisle caught me outside before I reached my truck. She introduced herself as Maya Brooks, a 7th grade teacher and Briar Glen homeowner. You asked the question everybody avoids, she said. Why? Because Valerie punishes curiosity. She showed me the board packet on her phone. Buried behind the revenue projections was a contract with Ross Marina Services. The HOA guaranteed lawful access to the lake and promised to cover every loss if ownership was challenged. Another page named Valerie's real estate company as exclusive booking agent. Commission, 18% per ticket. Can homeowners request the full records? I asked. Maya gave a tired laugh. They can request anything. I photographed the pages and helped her draft a formal demand for the contracts, insurance certificates, board minutes, and conflict disclosures. My phone buzzed before we finished. A motion alert from the camera at the farmhouse gate. On the screen, a work truck rolled down my maintenance road carrying steel dock sections. Behind it came Valerie's white SUV. The first lie had sold houses. Now it was about to pour concrete into my shoreline. I was back at the lake in 9 minutes. The work truck had already crossed the maintenance road. Steel dock sections hung off the trailer, clanging every time the tires dropped into a rut. Valerie's white SUV idled beside the ticket booth, while 3 contractors marked the shoreline with orange paint. I parked across the road and stepped out with my phone recording. Shut it down. A broad-shouldered man in a Ross Marina shirt raised both hands. Caleb Ross. We've got a signed site contract. You've got a contract for land your client doesn't own. Caleb looked toward Valerie. She came around her SUV holding a leather folder. No yelling. No performance. Just that polished smile from the board meeting. You should have stayed for the executive session, Ethan. There was no executive session on the agenda. There is now. She handed Caleb a survey image showing the access lane and shoreline shaded blue and labeled HOA recreational parcel. It looked official until I compared the corner numbers with the deed photograph on my phone. 2 identifiers were missing. Where did this come from? Our legal file. That isn't an answer. It's the only one you're entitled to. I photographed every page before she could close the folder. Caleb's contract guaranteed lawful access and promised reimbursement if ownership was challenged. Valerie had put the HOA's money behind her claim. Then she produced a notarized affidavit. Leonard Price, former board secretary, swore that my father had granted Briar Glen permanent lake access 18 years ago. My father's name sat in the middle of the page like someone had dragged him into the argument after he was gone. I read the execution date twice and photographed the notary's stamp, address, and document number. A truck door slammed behind me. 2 Briar Glen security guards blocked the road while a process server walked up carrying a white envelope. You've been served. Valerie had filed for emergency relief that morning. The petition accused me of disrupting established community operations, threatening contractors, and blocking lawful access. Attached were photographs of me at the ticket booth and clips from the board meeting cut just before Valerie turned off the microphone. Caleb shifted his weight. I'm stopping work until a judge says otherwise. For the first time, Valerie's smile cracked. You're under contract. And your contract says you guarantee access. That mattered. I saved the exchange on video, uploaded the recording to cloud storage, then texted copies to Rachel. It felt like housekeeping. Later, it would matter far more than I understood. By noon, a judge had issued a narrow emergency order. I could not block the maintenance road, remove the tour equipment, seize the boats, or interfere with already scheduled operations until an expedited hearing. The order did not give Briar Glen ownership, but Valerie had sworn the tours were insured, professionally managed, and historically authorized. That was enough to tie my hands. The contractors left the steel sections stacked beside the shore, but the tours continued. By sunset, Valerie had posted the order online under the headline "Caldwell Claim Rejected." Homeowners filled the comments with accusations that I was trying to steal their lake and bankrupt the neighborhood. Rachel called from the farmhouse. There's a lien notice on your work truck. I closed my eyes. To hire Dana Mercer, I had pledged the truck and my shop equipment for the retainer. The tools that paid my bills were now tied to a fight over land we already owned. Across the water, a pontoon boat returned under strings of decorative lights. Guests laughed as it bumped against Valerie's temporary platform. A teenage boy stepped onto the wet plywood. The board snapped beneath him. His body disappeared between the dock and the boat. The boy came up screaming. Caleb dropped to one knee and hauled him against the platform while his mother clawed at the railing. Blood ran from a gash below his knee, bright against the black water. Someone shouted for towels. Someone else called 911. I stood 6 feet away, legally forbidden to touch the structure that had just failed on my property. Valerie arrived before the ambulance. She pushed through the crowd in heels, phone already raised, issuing instructions like the scene belonged to her. Clear the walkway. Caleb, secure the boat. Nobody speaks to reporters. The boy's father pointed at the broken plywood. Who built this? Valerie looked straight at me. The property owner refused to cooperate with our safety improvements. The words landed harder than the siren approaching through the trees. I started recording. You installed that platform. Under lawful community authority. You told the court it was professionally managed. Her eyes flicked toward my phone, then back to the gathering homeowners. Our attorneys will address Mr. Caldwell's interference. By morning, the photograph was everywhere. Not the broken board. Not Valerie's temporary platform. Me standing behind the ambulance with my arms folded, cropped beneath a headline accusing a private landowner of endangering Briar Glen families. The injury demand arrived 2 days later. The envelope felt heavy enough to bend the kitchen table. The teenager's attorney named the HOA, Ross Marina Services, and the Caldwell Family Trust. Medical bills, future treatment, pain and suffering, negligent maintenance of waterfront property. Rachel read the first page, then sat down slowly. They can take the lake. They can try. And the farmhouse. I didn't answer fast enough. Dana called while we were still staring at the papers. The HOA's carrier denied commercial coverage, she said. Valerie described these as volunteer community outings. No paid public tours. No ticket revenue. No temporary dock. I looked at the framed screenshot from my ticket receipt. Fully insured attraction. The lie was right there, but it didn't stop the claim against us. It only meant everyone would fight harder over who had to pay. That afternoon, Valerie held a press conference outside the clubhouse. She stood behind a podium with 3 board members and announced that Briar Glen had suspended dock construction because of my continued obstruction. She never mentioned the tours were still running. She never mentioned the insurance denial. She held up the emergency order and called it proof that the HOA had acted responsibly. Homeowners applauded. At the farmhouse gate, somebody had spray-painted "Thief" across Dad's wooden sign. Rachel scrubbed until the red paint smeared into the grain. I took the rag from her when her hands started shaking. I should have blocked that first bus, I said, and gone to jail for violating the order. At least that kid wouldn't have fallen. You don't know that. But I knew I had watched the machine keep moving because I wanted its paper trail complete. Now a teenager had stitches, our trust had a liability claim, and my work truck belonged halfway to a lender. Maya called after dark. Her voice was low. The records came. She emailed the board packet Valerie had delayed releasing. No commercial insurance approval. No ownership opinion. No board vote authorizing paid tours. But there was a contract amendment signed by Valerie alone, increasing her company's booking commission 3 weeks before the first ticket sold. I opened my waiver beside the insurer's denial letter. Same tour. Same dates. 2 completely different descriptions. Valerie had won the public story. But to do it, she had told the court, the customers, the board, and the insurance company 4 versions of the truth. I laid the 4 versions of Valerie's story side by side. The court filing said the tours were professionally managed and fully insured. My ticket waiver said Briar Glen owned the lake. The board records described a volunteer community program. The insurance application called the outings occasional and unpaid. Same boats. Same shoreline. Same dates. For different truths, depending on who was reading. I scanned every page, saved the files to 2 encrypted drives, and uploaded copies to Dana's case folder. Then I printed hard copies and sealed them in Dad's old metal document box. Rachel watched me label each envelope. Court, customers, board, insurance. You think that's enough? No. I think it tells us where to look. We started with the ticket numbers. My receipt was 00418. Maya's records included weekly sales summaries, but the totals didn't match the deposits shown in the board ledger. The missing money wasn't random. Every gap appeared beside the same line item: lake restoration fee, $12 per ticket. I pulled up the 11 real estate listings from Part 2. Each promised permanent lake access. Each carried Valerie's brokerage logo. Each sale closed before the HOA had supposedly launched its first public tour. The lake business hadn't grown out of community tradition. It had been used to sell houses first. Dana subpoenaed the payment processor and sent a preservation notice to Valerie's booking company. I called Tom Alvarez and described the brass marker under the booth. He went quiet. "What letters did you see?" "T. Alvarez." "That marker was mine." The next morning, Tom met me at the southeastern corner with a canvas survey bag and a pair of mud-stained boots. He didn't touch the booth. He stood 20 feet away, checked the culvert, then sighted along the tree line. "That drainage easement is narrow," he said. "Water crosses. People don't." He remembered the county field notebook that contained the original measurements, including points omitted from the simplified subdivision map Valerie had shown Caleb. Dana requested the archived file. While we waited, Rachel went back to Dad's tackle cabinet. This time she didn't search for legal papers. She opened the swollen fishing logs and followed the dates. "Here," she said. The charity event entry listed 43 children, 61 fish, 2 broken rods, and 1 note in the margin: permission letter filed with attendance sheet. The attendance sheets were folded inside an old tournament envelope behind the bottom drawer. My hand stopped when I saw Valerie Whitmore's signature. I read only enough to confirm the date and the words temporary, non-commercial, and revocable. Then I slid the letter into a clear sleeve without touching the ink again. No celebration. No phone call to Valerie. Dana traced Leonard Price through the notary journal attached to his affidavit. The journal showed Valerie had arranged the signing remotely. Leonard agreed to speak after Dana sent him the full document he had supposedly sworn to. He called back 20 minutes later. "That isn't what she showed me." Dana recorded nothing until Leonard had counsel and signed a formal statement. "We weren't building a rumor. We were building something that could survive pressure." By Friday, the county delivered Tom's field notebook. The measurements placed the ticket booth, access lane, parking area, temporary platform, and proposed dock entirely inside Caldwell property. Valerie still believed silence meant weakness. She announced Founders Weekend that afternoon and released the final block of premium tickets. I watched the reservation counter drop. 6 left. 3. 1. Sold out. Then I forwarded the complete evidence package to Dana, the county safety office, and Agent Lauren Pike at Consumer Protection. At 4:17 p.m., I clicked send on the formal request for immediate suspension of all commercial lake operations. The counterattack was no longer an idea. It had a timestamp. At 4:19, Dana confirmed the files had been received. At 4:26, the county safety office acknowledged the suspension request. At 4:41, Valerie posted a video from the clubhouse steps announcing that Founders Weekend would proceed, despite one disgruntled landowner's latest attempt to sabotage Briar Glen families. She stood beneath a banner advertising sold-out lake tours while homeowners clapped behind her. I watched without sound. "She's doubling down," Rachel said. "She has to." The county inspector reached the lake Saturday morning, 6 hours before the first premium tour. I met him at the gate with Dana, Tom Alvarez, and copies of the emergency order. Valerie arrived with 2 board members, Caleb Ross, the HOA attorney, and a local news crew she had invited herself. She wanted witnesses. So did I. The inspector examined the temporary platform first. He pressed one boot against the split board where the teenager had fallen, then photographed the unsupported edge and the fasteners driven into untreated plywood. Valerie folded her arms. "That damage occurred because Mr. Caldwell prevented completion of our permanent dock." I said nothing. Dana had warned me before we arrived. One angry interruption could help Valerie renew the order, shift the injury blame, and keep the tours operating through the hearing. My truck, my equipment, and the family trust were still exposed. Calm wasn't a personality trait anymore. It was collateral. The inspector asked for proof of commercial insurance. Valerie handed him a certificate. He studied it, then looked toward the boats. "This covers HOA common areas and volunteer events. These are community events. There are ticket sales. Suggested contributions. I opened my phone, but didn't show him the transaction records. Not yet. The inspector walked to the booth. Tom remained beside me, staring at the support post covering his brass marker. May I measure from the culvert? He asked. Valerie's attorney stepped forward. No independent survey activity while access remains disputed. The inspector looked at Dana. Dana produced the archived field notebook and the simplified plat Valerie had given Caleb. She placed them side by side on the hood of my truck without explaining the difference. Valerie saw the old county seal. Her face didn't change, but her thumb began rubbing the edge of her folder. The inspection ended with a written suspension. No commercial passengers, no paid events, no use of the temporary platform until insurance, structural safety, and lawful access were verified. The tours were stopped. The ticket sales remained. Valerie read the notice once, then turned directly toward the cameras. This is administrative harassment based on fraudulent documents supplied by Ethan Caldwell. That sentence cost her nothing in the parking lot. An hour later, under oath at the expedited hearing, it cost more. The courtroom smelled like old carpet and rain-soaked coats. Valerie sat straight behind her attorney while Dana presented only enough to challenge the existing order, the deed, the drainage language, and the county suspension. The judge asked Valerie one question. Did you personally verify that Briar Glen possessed permanent commercial access before authorizing these sales? Her attorney touched her sleeve. Valerie pulled away. Yes, Your Honor. Based on what? She opened the leather folder from the shoreline and submitted Leonard Price's affidavit, the altered survey image, and a sworn declaration bearing her own signature. The declaration stated that she had reviewed the original grant, confirmed the boundary, disclosed all commissions, and verified full commercial insurance before the first ticket was sold. Dana glanced at me but didn't smile. The court clerk stamped the declaration. Valerie leaned back as if she had finally pinned me beneath the weight of my own property. I looked at the stamp, then at the 4 contradictory files secured in Dana's case box. The last version of Valerie's truth was now under oath. Valerie's attorney stood before Dana could respond. Your Honor, Mr. Caldwell is using administrative delays to interfere with a profitable community program. The HOA has operated in good faith based on historical access, professional surveys, and sworn testimony. Valerie sat beside him with her chin raised. She had submitted the declaration herself, reviewed the original grant, confirmed the boundary, disclosed every commission, verified commercial insurance. For claims, all under oath. Dana opened the metal case box. She began with the insurance certificate Valerie had handed the county inspector that morning. Then she placed the carrier's denial letter beside it. The policy number matched. The descriptions did not. One called the tours occasional volunteer outings. The other called them a fully insured public attraction. The judge looked over his glasses. Which description did you provide to the insurer, Ms. Whitmore? Valerie leaned toward her attorney. He answered for her. The program evolved. Dana placed my ticket on the evidence screen. Waiver 00418 appeared above the words owned, operated, and fully insured by Briar Glen HOA. The restoration fee sat beneath it. $12. Valerie's attorney objected that one ticket proved nothing. Dana submitted the payment processor's preserved records. The first sale, the last sale, every ticket between them. The founder's weekend inventory Valerie had proudly sold out before the county suspension. Wedding deposits, corporate packages, fishing tours, 18% commissions routed to her real estate company. The courtroom went still enough to hear the ventilation system click. Dana moved to the survey. Tom identified the brass marker beneath the ticket booth from the county field notebook and explained how the original measurements tied that marker to the drainage culvert. The simplified image Valerie gave Caleb omitted 2 control points and widened the easement across the shoreline. The court-appointed clerk compared the county archive stamp to the copy Valerie had submitted. Valerie shifted in her chair. That's an outdated field sketch, she said. The community's rights were expanded later. Dana didn't argue. She handed the clerk Dad's original permission letter. The paper appeared on the screen with its staple holes, faded type, and Valerie Whitmore's signature at the bottom. Temporary, non-commercial, revocable, no future access right created. I watched Valerie read her own name. For the first time since this started, she stopped performing. Her attorney requested a recess. The judge denied it. Dana called Leonard Price by video from his attorney's office. He confirmed the notary entry, the emails Valerie sent, and the single signature page she had shown him. He had believed he was verifying that the charity fishing day occurred. He had never seen the language claiming permanent access. Valerie pushed back from the table. He knew what he signed. Dana displayed Valerie's email to Leonard. Routine confirmation. Historical event only. No property transfer language. The judge's expression hardened. Valerie tried one final turn. She claimed the HOA board had approved everything, that homeowners benefited, and that Ethan Caldwell waited deliberately while tickets sold because he wanted the program to fail. Dana entered the board minutes Maya had obtained. No vote authorizing commercial tours. No approval of Valerie's commissions. No commercial insurance review. Then came the contract amendment she had signed alone, increasing her percentage 3 weeks before the first ticket sale. Behind me, Briar Glen homeowners began whispering. Not about me. About her. The judge dissolved the emergency order, prohibited all HOA access, advertising, construction, and commercial activity at Caldwell Lake, and ordered every financial and booking record preserved. Then Agent Lauren Pike stood from the second row. She handed Valerie's attorney a state investigative demand covering the booking company, restoration fees, real estate advertisements, and related party transfers. Valerie stared at the papers. The courtroom deputy stepped between her and the exit. For the first time, she wasn't deciding who could enter my property. She was being told she couldn't leave with the records. Agent Pike's demand froze the room faster than the judge's order. Valerie's attorney took the packet with both hands. The booking records, restoration fees, property listings, and transfers to her brother's company were now locked under state preservation rules. Nothing could be deleted, moved, or rewritten without creating another problem. 3 weeks later, the first unauthorized structure came down. Caleb Ross stood beside the shoreline while his crew unbolted the temporary platform and loaded the steel dock sections back onto the same trailer that had carried them in. He didn't argue. His contract guaranteed lawful access, and Valerie's guarantee had failed. When the ticket booth lifted, sunlight struck the brass marker beneath it. T. Alvarez. Tom brushed the dirt away with his glove and checked the measurement against his field notebook. Then he nodded once. The boundary had never moved. Only the story about it had. The injury claim settled without touching the Caldwell Trust. Briar Glen's insurer contributed after its internal review showed warning signs had been ignored, and Valerie's settlement covered the remaining amount. The teenager received treatment, Caleb's company paid for the defective platform, and the boy's family withdrew its claim against us. Dana mailed me the release on a Tuesday morning. I read it twice, then carried it into the workshop and removed the lender's notice from my tool cabinet. The work truck stayed mine. So did the equipment Dad had taught me to use. Valerie resigned before the homeowners could remove her. She returned her commissions, repaid the restoration money, and sold an investment property to cover part of the refunds and shoreline repairs. The state investigation remained open, but no one dragged her away in handcuffs. She lost the authority she had abused, the money she had hidden, and the business she had built on someone else's property. That was enough. The homeowners elected Maya president. At her first meeting, the board approved independent audits, conflict disclosures, recorded votes for major contracts, and a permanent declaration stating that Briar Glen held no ownership, recreational, commercial, or access rights to Caldwell Lake. Maya brought the recorded copy to the farmhouse herself. No confidential legal file this time, she said. Rachel smiled as she slid it into Dad's metal document box beside the deed, the maintenance ledger, and the original one-day permission letter. The recovered restoration fees finally restored something. Crews rebuilt the damaged bank, removed the gravel parking pad, replanted the cattails, and repaired the ruts left by buses and trailers. The orange security notice disappeared from our gate. Someone from Briar Glen quietly sanded the last red paint from Dad's wooden sign. By spring, the lake looked like itself again. I could have kept the gate locked forever. Instead, Rachel and I drafted a one-day license modeled on Dad's old letter. Temporary. Revocable. Non-commercial. No future rights created. Once a year, Briar Glen families could attend a free fishing day. Attendance was limited. Insurance was verified. Safety equipment was inspected. Optional donations went to the volunteer rescue squad. The first morning, I stood beside the old ticket booth site while children carried fishing poles toward the water. No charter bus. No wristbands. No glossy sign promising exclusive access. Maya checked names at a folding table, while Tom's brass survey marker remained visible in the grass beside a small plaque. Permission is not possession. Inside the farmhouse, I framed ticket 00418 next to Dad's signed letter. One had been used to sell my lake. The other had taught us how to share it without giving it away. At sunset, the last family walked back through the gate, and I closed it behind them. The latch settled into place with one clean metallic click.